Screams echoed through the market when a stranger dismounted and, with a single gesture, did something no one would dare. In minutes, the entire village was talking about it, and that woman's life would change forever. Subscribe to our channel and discover how one act turned into a silent revolution. In the small town of Candeias do Jequitinhonha, in the interior of Minas Gerais, where red dust covered everything like an unforgiving blanket, Dona Sebastiana carried on her hunched shoulders the weight of her 68 years and a life marked by scarcity. Her husband Juvenal had passed away after a mysterious fever that consumed him in 3 days, leaving her with a dozen free-range chickens and a beaten earth yard. Her knotted fingers, marked by time and work, carefully arranged the eggs in the straw basket she had woven herself, counting them as if they were gold coins. 15 fresh eggs, her only source of income that week. Perhaps today the wind blows differently, she murmured to herself, adjusting the faded scarf on her grey hair. The wrinkles around her eyes deepened when she forced a smile in front of the cracked mirror, the only object that remained from better times. The drought that had punished the region for almost 2 years had made it even more difficult to sell her small production. Neighbors in the Olaria district barely had enough to eat, let alone money to buy eggs. That day she had decided to try her luck in the upper part of town, where houses had colored glass windows, and people wore shoes even inside their homes. Sebastiana crossed the red dirt road, greeting acquaintances with a discreet nod. Some children ran barefoot, playing with a tin car. One of them, little Gabriel, just 6 years old, son of her friend Zulmira, ran toward her. "Bless me, Grandma Tiana." The boy was not her blood grandson, but he was the closest child she had after her children left for São Paulo, never to return. "God bless you, my child. Have you eaten today?" The concern was genuine. She knew well the signs of disguised hunger. Gabriel smiled, showing a gap where 2 baby teeth had fallen out, and clutched her worn cotton skirt. "Are you selling eggs today? Can I come with you?" Sebastiana hesitated, looking at the basket she carried so carefully. "Today I'm going up there, my child. Go back to your mother. It's not a place for us." The boy lowered his head, understanding without needing further explanation. Even so young, he already knew the invisible boundaries that divided Candeias. Dona Sebastiana continued on her way, climbing the hill that led to the noble part of the city. The merciless 10 o'clock sun punished her back, but each step was taken carefully, so as not to shake the basket too much. Each egg represented a handful of flour, a piece of bread, a new candle. Upon arriving at the first big house, with a high wall and ornate iron gate, she felt her heart race. She adjusted her dress, ran her hand through her hair, and knocked timidly on the gate. A maid in a blue uniform opened just a crack, examining her with suspicion. "What do you want?" "Good morning, miss. I have fresh eggs to sell, collected early today, still warm. Would your mistress like to buy some?" The woman made a face of disdain. "Here we only buy from the market with invoices." And she closed the gate without waiting for a response. Sebastiana swallowed hard and moved on to the next house. She received similar responses at 4 more residences, some not even opening the gate. On the 6th attempt, she stopped in front of the largest house in Candeias, the mansion of Colonel Januario Mendonça, owner of the only pharmacy in town and half of the productive lands in the region. The impeccable garden, the huge windows and the spacious veranda made a violent contrast with her shack in Olaria. She took a deep breath, adjusted her scarf, and rang the golden bell. To her surprise, Colonel Januario himself appeared at the door, tall, corpulent, wearing a light suit despite the heat, with a gold watch hanging from his vest pocket. "What is it?" he asked in a deep voice, not hiding his impatience. Sebastiana held the basket more tightly against her chest. "Good morning, Colonel. I'm selling fresh eggs from my own yard. Would you—" Before she could finish, the man interrupted her with a dry laugh that sounded like a whiplash. "Country eggs? Do you think my family will eat backyard eggs? Without inspection, full of chicken dirt. Have some patience." The tone was one of absolute scorn. "They're clean, Colonel. I wash each one with—" "Get off my doorstep, old woman. Go sell that at the poor people's market." As he spoke, he made a sudden gesture toward the basket as if shooing away an insect. Sebastiana instinctively backed away, but the movement was enough to unbalance the eggs in the basket. One of them rolled and fell on the marble floor of the entrance, breaking with a crack that seemed to echo throughout the street. The golden yolk spread at the colonel's feet, slightly staining his polished shoe. The man looked down, then stared at Sebastiana with eyes injected with rage. "Look what you've done, you incompetent old woman," he vociferated, taking a step forward. "You'll pay for this. These shoes cost more than your entire house." Sebastiana trembled from head to toe, feeling the blood leave her face. She had no way to pay even for the broken egg, much less for the colonel's imported shoes. At that moment, she realized that several people had stopped to observe the scene. Neighbors from the upper part, housemaids at windows, and even the baker who delivered fresh bread to the mansions. All witnessed her humiliation in complicit silence. Sebastiana's heart felt like it would leap from her mouth. Shame burned her face more than the relentless Mina's son. The colonel continued to shout threats, talking about calling his friend Delegate Aristides, when the firm sound of horse hooves interrupted the scene. All eyes turned to the man approaching on an imposing black horse. It was Joaquim Santero, known as Quim, the most respected cowboy in the region, feared by some, admired by others, a man of few words and precise gestures. He dismounted with a fluid movement, tied his horse to the nearest post, and walked toward Sebastiana and the colonel with determined steps, like someone who already knew what he was going to do before even arriving. Silence took over the street as he positioned himself beside Sebastiana, his thin but firm body creating a presence that could not be ignored. Quim Santero observed the scene for a few moments, his dark eyes analyzing each detail. The stain on the colonel's shoe, the broken egg on the floor, Donna Sebastiana's drooping shoulders. Without saying a word, he extended his hand, and with a gesture no one expected, took the basket from the trembling hands of the lady. "What do you think you're doing?" asked the colonel, surprised by the audacity. Quim did not respond. With deliberate movements, he turned the basket and let all the remaining eggs fall to the ground, breaking one after another. The sound of shells shattering against the marble caused a collective gasp in the small crowd that was forming. Donna Sebastiana brought her hands to her mouth, stifling a scream. Those eggs were all she had to sell that day, perhaps for the entire week. "Have you lost your mind, Santero?" shouted the colonel, backing away to prevent the contents of the eggs from reaching his Italian shoes. But Quim remained silent. He slowly crouched down and, to everyone's amazement, began to collect the shell pieces with his own hands, carefully separating the parts that could still be used. The yolks and whites mixed in a golden puddle on the white marble. Then he stood up and slowly turned, facing each of the people watching the scene. "This is food," he finally said, with his deep and calm voice. "It's the sustenance that this woman has to offer, and food in my land is respected." The tone was not one of defiance or anger. There was only the unwavering certainty of someone who knows the real value of things. He then turned to a girl who was watching the scene holding her mother's hand, a maid from the neighboring house. "Little one, go get a bowl, quickly." The child looked at her mother, who nodded discreetly and ran off. Quim then addressed the baker. "Mr. Antenor, that bread from yesterday that you were going to give to the pigs, do you still have it?" The man nodded, intrigued. "Bring it." Gradually, as if responding to an ancient call that everyone knew but had forgotten, people began to approach. The girl returned with a ceramic bowl where Quim carefully deposited the yolks and whites he had managed to save. The baker brought a bag with bread from the previous day. A lady from the neighboring house appeared with a frying pan. Someone lit a small improvised stove right there, on the sidewalk of Colonel Januario's mansion, who observed the scene with a mixture of indignation and perplexity. "What do you think you're doing in front of my house? I'll call the police," he threatened, but his voice no longer had the same authority. No one paid attention to him. In a few minutes, the aroma of scrambled eggs with herbs, brought by one of the cooks, spread through the street. Quim cut the bread and distributed portions to everyone who approached, starting with Donna Sebastiana. "This is an outrage, a property invasion," the colonel continued, now speaking to no one. That's when Father Romero, who was passing by and had been attracted by the crowd, approached. A middle-aged man, with grey hair at the temples and gentle eyes, he was respected by both the poor and the rich of Candeas. "What's happening here, my children?" he asked, observing the unusual scene. The colonel immediately addressed him. "Father, control these people. They're causing a riot in front of my house." The priest observed the frying pan, the bread being shared, the now serene face of Donna Sebastiana, and Quim's firm eyes. He smiled slightly. "I see people sharing food, Colonel. In which part of the gospel is that considered a riot?" The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of chewing and murmurs of approval from those eating. The father approached Quim and Sebastiana, accepting a piece of bread with egg. "Very good, Donna Sebastiana. Your eggs have always been the best in the region." The lady smiled timidly, feeling a dignity she had not experienced for a long time. The colonel, realizing he was losing control of the situation, went into his house, slamming the door. The small improvised meal lasted less than half an hour, but its meaning would extend for much longer. When it ended, people began to disperse, each returning to their activities, but something had changed. They looked at Donna Sebastiana differently, not with pity or indifference, but with newfound respect. Quim cleaned his hands on a handkerchief offered by someone and approached her. "You raise the best chickens in this town, Donna Sebastiana. Tomorrow is market day in São Joaquim do Norte. If you allow, I'll come to pick you up early. There, people know how to value what's good." Before she could respond, Father Romero intervened. "I have an even better idea. Sunday after Mass, we'll have a small market in the churchyard. What do you think?" He looked around, receiving nods of approval from those present. "Whoever has something to sell or exchange, come, let's start valuing what is ours." Little Gabriel, who was watching everything from afar, came running and grabbed onto Donna Sebastiana's skirt. "Grandma Tiana, can I help you with the chickens? I know how to scare away snakes and hawks." His enthusiasm drew smiles. "Yes, you can, my child. I really need a brave helper like you." As people dispersed, the father pulled Quim aside. "That was a strong gesture of yours, Santero, but the colonel won't forget this so easily." The cowboy just nodded, his face as impassive as ever. "There are things a man does because they need to be done, father. Nothing more." He mounted his horse and, before leaving, looked at Donna Sebastiana. "Tomorrow, before sunrise." She nodded, still stunned by the events. As she walked back to her shack in Olaria, with Gabriel skipping by her side, Sebastiana felt different. She had lost all the eggs of that day, but she had gained something she didn't know she needed, a sense of belonging that she hadn't experienced for a long time. The next day, still dark, Quim appeared mounted on his black horse, pulling a donkey with 2 empty baskets. Donna Sebastiana was already waiting for him, with 3 dozen eggs carefully wrapped in straw. She wore her only good dress, kept for masses and special occasions, and had tied her hair with her least faded scarf. Gabriel was also there, eyes shining with excitement at the idea of the trip. "The boy comes too?" asked Quim, showing no surprise. "If it's not a bother, his mother has already authorized it." Quim just nodded, first helping the boy to climb on the donkey, then extending his hand to Sebastiana. The journey to São Joaquim do Norte took almost 2 hours. The sun was rising when they arrived at the small neighboring town, where the market was already beginning to form in the central square. Sebastiana had never left Candeias before, and observed everything with marveled eyes: the colorful stalls, the variety of products, the lively buzz of vendors and buyers. Quim led her to a space between a pot seller and a lace maker. "This is good," he said simply, helping her to organize the eggs in the basket for display. Then he walked away, blending into the crowd. Sebastiana was apprehensive, not knowing exactly how to proceed, but Gabriel assumed the role of salesman with enthusiasm. "Fresh eggs, the best eggs in Minas, chickens raised on real corn," he shouted, imitating the other vendors. To her surprise, people began to stop and show interest. A plump lady bought half a dozen. A man in a straw hat took a whole dozen. By the end of the morning, all the eggs had been sold, and Sebastiana was holding some bills and coins, more money than she had managed to gather in the past 2 months in Candeias. During the journey back to Candeias, Sebastiana could barely contain the emotion bubbling in her chest. Gabriel slept in the empty basket, exhausted after his enthusiastic performance as an improvised salesman. Quim rode silently beside her, his sunburned face revealing little of what he thought. "Why did you do that yesterday?" Sebastiana finally found the courage to ask. The cowboy took a few moments before answering, as if weighing each word. "My mother also sold eggs," he said simply, "and no one ever stopped to help her." That answer, as short as it was profound, created between them an understanding that went beyond words. The rest of the journey passed in comfortable silence. Upon arriving in Candeas, the sun was already setting, painting the sky orange and red. Quim helped Sebastiana down from the donkey and handed her the still sleeping boy. Sunday after Mass, he reminded her, referring to the market proposed by Father Romero. She nodded, squeezing the money in the pocket of her dress as if it were a talisman. Something had changed in her. A spark of hope that she thought was extinct had been rekindled. In the wooden shack of Olaria, Sebastiana counted and recounted the money earned, planning how to multiply it. Part would buy corn for the chickens to produce more and better eggs, part she would save for emergencies, and a small amount she would set aside to buy a notebook and pencil for Gabriel. The boy deserved a reward for his help, and perhaps, if he learned to read and write properly, he could have a different destiny than hers. The days leading up to Sunday were of intense preparation. Sebastiana cleaned the yard, gave extra corn to the chickens, collected each egg with almost reverential care. She counted them several times, 5½ dozen, all perfect. Her friend Zulmira, Gabriel's mother, offered to help decorate small straw baskets to present the eggs in a more attractive way. The news of the market in the churchyard spread quickly through Candeas, provoking diverse reactions. In Olaria and other poor neighborhoods, there was a mixture of enthusiasm and distrust. Would it be possible to create a space where they could sell their products with dignity? In the upper part, the reaction was predominantly negative, especially in Colonel Januario's mansion. "It's absurd. The priest is turning the church into a flea market," he vociferated to whoever would listen. "I'll speak to the bishop. This won't stand." But his threats lost strength each day as more people embraced the idea. On Saturday morning, the eve of the market, a messenger knocked on Sebastiana's door. It was a young man employed at the farm of Mr. Tadeo, one of the largest cattle breeders in the region. "Donna Sebastiana, the boss sent this and said he expects you tomorrow at the market." He handed her a burlap sack containing superior quality corn and a small handwritten note, "To feed the chickens that lay the best eggs in Minas." The unexpected gesture left her speechless. She didn't even know Mr. Tadeo personally. When the messenger left, she sat on the doorstep with the sack of corn in her lap and cried, not from sadness, but from an overflowing gratitude. On Sunday, St. Joachim's Church was fuller than usual for the 7 o'clock Mass. People from all corners of Candeas and even from neighboring localities crowded onto the wooden benches. Father Romero, sensing the climate of expectation, gave a sermon about the multiplication of the loaves and fishes, emphasizing the importance of sharing and valuing everyone's work. "Christ did not create bread from nothing," he said with a firm voice, looking directly at Colonel Januario, who shifted uncomfortably in the first pew. "He valued the little that a boy brought and made it enough for everyone. That's what we are called to do in our community." At the end of the Mass, as people gathered in the churchyard where small improvised stalls were beginning to appear, the colonel approached the priest in the sacristy. "You are causing a division in the city, Father Romero. This goes against everything this church has represented for the last 50 years. The priest finished storing the vestments before responding with a calm that disarmed. "The division already existed, Colonel. We are just building a bridge over it." And he left to accompany the organization of the market, leaving the man without a response. Outside, the churchyard had been transformed. Small tables covered with simple but clean cloths displayed the most diverse products: homemade cheeses, jams, fresh vegetables, crafts in straw and wood, and of course, Donna Sebastiana's eggs, organized in small baskets decorated with colored ribbons. Gabriel ran from one side to the other, announcing the products as he had done in São Joaquim do Norte. The atmosphere was festive and communal. What began as a small market quickly transformed into a social event. People who normally did not mix were now animatedly conversing, exchanging not only goods, but also stories and experiences. Donna Augusta, the pharmacist's wife, discovered that Donna Josefa's cheese curd from the lowlands cured her digestive problem better than the expensive medicines her husband sold. Mr. Agostinho, owner of the only hotel in town, was charmed by Donna Matilde's crochet tablecloths and ordered 2 dozen to renew the appearance of his establishment. Sebastiana observed everything with a mixture of joy and disbelief. Her egg baskets attracted a constant line of buyers, many of whom had never addressed her before. "They really are special, your eggs," commented the municipal schoolteacher after buying a dozen. "The yolks have a color I've never seen before." Quim Santero appeared briefly, buying eggs and exchanging a few words with Sebastiana before moving away again, uncomfortable with crowds. Father Romero circulated among the stalls, ensuring that everything went well and mediating when necessary. Near noon, a buzz spread through the market. Colonel Januario had returned, accompanied by Delegate Aristides and 2 policemen. They came with severe expressions, making people open a path. Sebastiana's heart accelerated, fearing they had come to forcibly end the market. But to everyone's surprise, the colonel stopped in front of Father Romero's table, where the priest had organized a small exhibition of religious objects. "How much for the hardwood rosary?" he asked, pointing to an artisanal rosary. The priest, quickly recovering from the surprise, replied, "It's not for sale, Colonel. It's for a charity raffle." The man nodded, took out his wallet and deposited a considerable amount in the donation box. "For the church works," he said dryly, before turning on his heels and leaving, followed by his small entourage. A momentary silence was broken by speculative murmurs. No one knew exactly how to interpret that gesture. Was it an attempt at appeasement, a veiled apology, or just a way to maintain his influence? The buzz was soon replaced by the previous animation, and the market continued until late afternoon. When the last stalls were being dismantled, Sebastiana counted her profit with fingers trembling with excitement. She had sold everything, and even received some orders for the following week. Father Romero gathered the participants in a small circle. "This was just the beginning," he announced with a smile. "From now on, every last Sunday of the month, we will have our market. And more, I got permission from the town hall to use the central square, not just the churchyard." The news was received with enthusiastic applause. 3 months passed since the first market in the churchyard. Candeas do Jequitinhonha was no longer the same. What had begun as a small event had transformed into a movement that was redesigning relationships in the city. The central square, previously frequented only by the wealthy on Sundays for ice cream after Mass, now buzzed with activity every last Sunday of the month. Colorful stalls aligned in organized rows, selling everything, from Donna Matilde's homemade preserves to wooden toys carved by Mr. Schuka. At the center of this transformation, almost without realizing it, was Donna Sebastiana. From a simple egg seller, she had become a respected figure, consulted about the organization of the market and called to resolve small conflicts. Her shack in Olaria, previously just a precarious shelter, had gained improvements. With the help of neighbors, she had managed to replace the rotted boards, install a burnished cement floor, and even build a small veranda where she now sat in the afternoons to receive visitors. The chicken yard had been expanded, and the number of birds had jumped from 12 to almost 50, all carefully selected to produce the best eggs. Gabriel, now her official helper, had begun to attend school regularly, using the notebook and pencils bought with the money from the first market. The boy revealed himself to be intelligent and curious, always asking questions about everything and everyone. "Grandma Tiana," he asked one afternoon while helping her collect the eggs, "why did Colonel Januario get so angry when Mr. Quim broke the eggs?" Sebastiana smiled, recalling the moment that had changed her life. "Because he thought he had power over everything and everyone, my child, and Mr. Quim showed that there are things that money can't buy." The little one nodded, absorbing the lesson as only children know how to do. The relationship between Sebastiana and Quim Santero had evolved into something difficult to define. It wasn't romance, as both carried too many scars for that, but there was a silent companionship, a mutual understanding that dispensed with words. He appeared regularly to help her with the heavier work, brought special corn for the chickens, and accompanied her to the larger markets in neighboring cities, always discreet, always vigilant. Quim never spoke of his past, but one night, sitting on the veranda under a starry sky typical of the Minas Sertão, he revealed a piece of his history. "My mother died of shame," he said suddenly, breaking a long silence. "After the farmer for whom we worked humiliated her in front of everyone, she was never the same again. She withered a little each day, until she simply didn't wake up one morning." Sebastiana didn't respond with words. She just covered his calloused hand with hers, equally marked by work. That gesture was worth more than any speech. The success of the market did not please everyone, evidently, Colonel Januario, after his ambiguous gesture of donation to the church, had withdrawn, rarely appearing in public. But his influence continued to be felt. Small obstacles appeared. A delayed authorization here, a surprise inspector there. Father Romero faced veiled pressures from the bishop, who received constant complaints about the worldification of the church. That Thursday, when the sun had not yet fully risen, Gabriel arrived running, breathless, at Sebastiana's door. "Grandma Tiana, Grandma Tiana! Mr. Pedro's warehouse caught fire. All the market stalls were stored there." The news hit her like a punch. Mr. Pedro's warehouse, a deactivated storehouse, had been provided to store the structures of the stalls, tables, and other equipment for the market. If everything was lost, how would they hold the event 3 days from now? "Are you sure, my child? Was it everything?" The boy nodded, eyes wide. "Everything turned to ashes, Grandma. They're saying it was a short circuit, but Mr. Roca said he saw someone running away before the fire started." Sebastiana took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility she didn't even know she carried. Many families now depended on the market to supplement their income, and more than that, it was a symbol of the new Candeias that was being born, a city where everyone had a voice and space. "Call your mother and go warn Father Romero. I'll go there to see the damage." When she arrived at the site, a small crowd had already gathered around the smoldering ruins. The acrid smell of burnt wood filled the air. Mr. Pedro, a gentleman of almost 70, cried silently, sitting on a tree stump. It was his only possession, that warehouse, an inheritance from his father. Delegate Aristides circulated around the site, making notes in a small notebook, with the air of someone fulfilling an unpleasant obligation. "Short circuit," he announced to no one in particular. "Old installation, exposed wires. Accident, clearly." Some people exchanged suspicious glances, but no one openly contested the authority. Sebastiana felt the discouragement growing around her. She saw in the faces of the vendors the same look of defeat that she herself had carried for so many years. That's when she noticed the silent presence of Quim Santero, examining the charred remains with unusual attention. He bent down, picked something up from the ground and discreetly put it in his pocket. Their eyes met, and she understood that he suspected something more sinister than a simple accident. Father Romero arrived soon after, bringing with him an aura of calm that began to dissipate the climate of despair. He gathered everyone in a circle, in the middle of the street. "Friends, this is a difficult moment, but it's not the end," he began, with that serene voice that inspired confidence. "We've lost the stalls and structures, but we haven't lost the most important thing, the spirit that has united us until now." There were murmurs of agreement, but also skeptical expressions. "How are we going to hold the market without the stalls, Father?" asked Donna Matilde, expressing everyone's doubt. "The last Sunday of the month is the day after tomorrow." That's when Sebastiana stepped forward, feeling an impulse she couldn't explain. "We'll do it anyway," she said, her voice firmer than it had ever been. "Without stalls, without structures. Each one brings what they have in an old table, a crate, a cloth. We set up at the time and dismantle at the end of the day." The buzz increased, some approving the idea, others pointing out difficulties. "What if it rains?" someone asked. "We pray it doesn't," she replied with a determined smile. "And if it rains anyway, we get wet together and continue." A nervous laugh ran through the group. Father Romero looked at her with admiration. "Donna Sebastiana is right. We can't let this stop us now. If we cancel, it will be much harder to start again later." The discussion continued for some time, but in the end, the decision was made. The market would happen, with or without adequate structures. The news spread quickly through Candeias and beyond. To everyone's surprise, offers of help began to arrive from unexpected places. The owner of the carpentry offered boards to improvise tables. The pharmacist's wife lent tablecloths. Even from neighboring cities came messages of support, with promises of visits on Sunday. On Friday afternoon, as Sebastiana organized the eggs that would be sold, she heard firm knocks on her door. Upon opening, she found the imposing figure of Colonel Januario. He was alone, without his usual entourage of flatterers, and seemed strangely uncomfortable. "May I come in, Donna Sebastiana?" he asked, with a formality she had never imagined hearing from him. Hesitantly, she gave way. He examined the simple but impeccably clean interior of the house before speaking again. "I heard about the fire in the warehouse." She nodded, tense, waiting. "A shame," he continued, twirling his hat in his hands. "I want you to know that I had nothing to do with it." The statement caught her by surprise. She had not openly accused the colonel, although, like many, she had her suspicions. "I have enemies too, Donna Sebastiana. People who would use my name to harm others." He paused, as if choosing his words. "I came to offer the covered area of my farm for this Sunday's market. They are 2 large sheds, with tables already installed for drying coffee. They're empty now." Sebastiana felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Of all the things she expected to hear, this was the last. "Why?" was all she could ask. The colonel looked away, suddenly interested in a chicken scratching near the window. "I have a granddaughter in São Paulo, 7 years old. I've never met her in person." His voice slightly broke. "Her mother, my daughter, left here swearing that I would never see either of them again." He made a heavy pause. "When I saw what Santeiro did for you that day, I remembered my daughter, how I treated her, how I treated everyone." Sebastiana said nothing, giving him space to continue. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Donna Sebastiana. I just want to do something right once in my life." The silence that followed was interrupted by the crow of a rooster in the distance. Finally, she spoke. "I need to talk to Father Romero and the others. I can't decide alone." He nodded, putting his hat back on. "I understand. The offer stands, whatever the decision." And he left, leaving her with more questions than answers. The emergency meeting at the parish house that night was tense. Opinions strongly diverged about whether or not to accept the colonel's offer. Some saw it as a providential opportunity, others as a trap or an attempt at control. "What if he closes the gates when we're all inside?" questioned Mr. Juca, always suspicious. "What if he uses this to appropriate the market afterward?" asked Donna Matilde. Father Romero listened carefully to each argument without imposing his opinion. Quim Santeiro, present at Sebastiana's request, remained silent in the corner of the room. "What do you think, Quim?" the priest finally asked, realizing that everyone valued the cowboy's opinion. He pushed himself off the wall, looking at each person present. "I think when a proud man like the colonel bends to the point of going to the house of someone he despised, it's because something has really changed." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Either he's being sincere or it's the most elaborate trap I've ever seen. Either way, it shows that he recognizes us now." The discussion continued for some time longer, but in the end, they decided to accept the offer with some conditions. The market would be open to all, without restrictions. The colonel would not interfere in the organization, and Mr. Juca, with some other trusted men, would spend the previous night at the location to ensure there would be no unpleasant surprises. Sunday dawned with a perfect blue sky, as if even nature wanted to contribute to the success of the market. Santa Clara Farm, property of Colonel Januario, opened its gates at 6 in the morning, receiving a procession of vendors carrying their merchandise. The 2 sheds mentioned were spacious and airy, with solid wood tables arranged in organized rows. Everything was clean and prepared, surpassing the most optimistic expectations. The colonel himself received people at the entrance without pomp or speeches, just indicating where each one could settle. Sebastiana observed the transformation of the man who had once humiliated her. There was no more that arrogance, that contempt. In its place, she saw an aged gentleman trying to fix something that perhaps couldn't be fixed. To everyone's surprise, that Sunday's market was the largest ever held. News of the fire and the overcoming had spread, attracting visitors from all over the region. Products ran out before noon, and new shipments had to be hastily improvised. Donna Sebastiana sold not only her eggs, but also some laying hens she had begun to raise especially for sale. Late in the afternoon, when the last vendors were arranging their things to leave, Colonel Januario asked for everyone's attention. Beside him were the mayor of Candeias and Father Romero. "I want to thank you all for trusting me today," he began, visibly moved. "This farm will remain open for the market every last Sunday of the month, for as long as you wish to use it." There was surprised applause. "But that's not all," he continued, gesturing for the mayor to step forward. The latter, a small man always in the colonel's shadow, seemed nervous. "The town hall today signed a decree officially creating the municipal market of Candeias do Jequitinhonha, with a permanent space in the central square and logistical support for all participants." More applause, now enthusiastic. "And to preside over the association of vendors," concluded the mayor, We invite Donna Sebastiana of the Eggs, as she is affectionately known by all. An astonished silence preceded the explosion of joy. Sebastiana was paralyzed, unable to process what she had just heard. She felt gentle hands pushing her forward. It was Gabriel, proud as if she were really his grandmother. "Go, Grandma Tiana. It's really you." She advanced tremulously to where the authorities were, wiping a stubborn tear with the tip of her apron. She hadn't prepared any speech, but the words came naturally. "I've never been one to talk much," she began with a choked voice, "but I know how to recognize when something important is happening. What we have here isn't just a market. It's a new way of living together." She looked at the colonel, then at the father, at Quim at the back of the shed, and finally at Gabriel, who was watching her with adoration. A way where no one is invisible, where everyone's work has value, where even broken eggs can become a shared meal. There was emotional laughter in the audience, as many recalled the incident that had initiated all that transformation. "I accept this responsibility, not for myself, but for all of us, and I promise that as long as I'm alive, no one will ever feel less than others in Candeas." The following week, a discreet plaque was installed at the entrance to the central square. "Donna Sebastiana Municipal Market, Mother of our Dignity." She protested against the honor, but Father Romero was inflexible. "It's not just for you, Sebastiana. It's for what you represent." And so the egg seller, who had once been humiliated at the door of a mansion, became a living symbol of a transformed community, not by revolution or violence, but by the unexpected gesture of a cowboy who knew how to transform destruction into unity, and by the silent courage of a woman who, even bent by the weight of age and difficulties, never lost the ability to rise and walk with her head held high. If this narrative touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share your own stories of overcoming in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for more tales that celebrate human dignity and the strength of community, and leave your like as a way of saying that you believe, just like Donna Sebastiana, that no one should be invisible in this world.